I am Dr. Jean Fourie, and in this talk I focus on supporting left-handed children in school. Handedness refers to the preferred hand for performing daily activities, holding things, waving, catching a ball, shaking hands, brushing teeth, writing, coloring, cutting with a knife or a scissors, stirring food, peeling vegetables, and so on. When a person uses one hand for more than 70% of tasks, this hand is considered their dominant hand. This means a person uses their dominant hand for most tasks, but there should be consistency with the hand usage across tasks. So writing with the left hand, but maybe playing cricket with the right hand. I advocate for inclusive education, and in this talk specifically embracing biological diversity such as body dominance, which manifests in preferential use of one hand. I touch on the historical and religious myths and falsehoods swirling around left-handedness, which impact learning communities. Then I give an overview of childhood development of left-handedness from a basic neuroscience perspective. And lastly, I provide didactic and pedagogical strategies to support left-handed children in their school activities. The bias against the left side, and left-handedness in particular, is linguistically entrenched in English roots and many other languages. Sinister comes from the Latin word sinistra, originally meaning on the left side, pertaining to the use of the slower or weaker hand. But the word developed evil connotations as seen in 14th century religious texts and superstitious teachings, with meanings of foreboding, malevolence, ill will, contrariness, unfavorable, and unlucky. These suggestions of darkness were prevalent in past societies, probably due to the dominance of right-handedness in populations. The preference for using the left hand, shown by the perceived deviant minority, was attributed to demonic possessions, sometimes leading to accusations of witchcraft and heresy, and was cursed by early religions as a mark of the devil, such as what happened to Joan of Arc. The Latin word dexter, on the other hand, means on the right side, and has survived in the word dexterity, meaning skillful use of hands. A person who is ambidextrous uses both left and right hands equally well. In many African, Asian, and Middle Eastern cultures, there is a strong stigma and social norms attached to the use of the left hand. As a general rule, with communal eating in mind, people eat their food and drink with their right hand, and do personal hygiene, toileting, and body cleansing with the left hand. Since the left hand is regarded as unclean, food is never touched. When exchanging money or shaking hands, using the left hand is considered disrespectful and rude. In schools, raising the left hand in class or pointing to an object with the left hand is frowned upon. In Vietnam, teachers deduct marks from tests if written with the left hand, as the right hand is the official hand to write with. And research shows that 70 to 80% of adults in these countries believe that parents and relatives are responsible for impressing the correct use of the right and left hand upon their children. In extreme cases, such as reported in Somalia, the use of the left hand is frowned upon, and children have been burnt with a fire stick to stop them from using this hand. Teachers should bear these stigmas in mind in classrooms where children show diversity of handedness. Left-handedness was previously deemed to be unacceptable and curable in children, as is seen in John Conway's 1935 pamphlet entitled The Prevention and Correction of Left-handedness in Children, where he described left-handedness as a serious disease, as problematic as rickets and pneumonia. At the time, he and others saw left-handedness as a deterrent to succeeding in the newly industrialized and mechanized world. The pamphlet described the training of children from infancy and to overcome left-handedness, which came as the result, he said, of parents who were indifferent to realize the seriousness of the handicap. He described left-handedness as a sinistrial condition and said that much was needed to be done to stamp out the newly recognized disease, this curse of left-handedness. This resulted in many children forced to use the right hand. Parents would beat their children using the left hand for eating or daily activities, and teachers would hit children over the knuckles when they used the left hand for writing and cutting. Consequently, many children were left with emotional scars, bruised hands, poor handwriting, and if they were lucky, ambidextrous hand usage. The left side of the body has also been revered. The ancient Celts worshipped the left side, associating it with femininity and fertility. In modern times, left-handedness is increasingly seen as a special gift, and social media highlights left-handed as being smarter, more intelligent, artistic, and creative than right-handers. This so-called fact has been investigated in various studies with ambiguous results and finally settled by a large-scale meta-analysis with over 20,000 individual IQ scores. They found a statistically significant effect where right-handers had a slightly higher average than left-handers. The conclusion is that the absolute magnitude of IQ differences between left and right-handers is extremely small and negligible in the general population. So no matter what social media fun fact pages report, left-handers in general are not smarter than the rest of the population. Teachers and parents should thus be cautious not to place unnecessary expectations on left-handed children and allow each child to develop their own unique talents. Nevertheless, there are many creative, influential left-handers as role models for children to follow, and thus parents and teachers should be encouraging and supportive of their left-handed children. The inclusive education agenda has been on the global stage since the United Nations 1990 World Conference on Education for All, held in Jean, calling for universal primary education for every child, youth, and adult, to have educational opportunities for literacy and numeracy. This was followed by the 1994 Salamanca Statement, calling for action to ensure educational access and quality mandates for all special needs children within the regular education system. As a signatory to these and various UNESCO initiatives, South Africa's commitment to the international community resulted in Education White Paper 6, promulgated in 2001 by the Department of Education, setting the vision for integrating mainstream and special needs education into a unified education system with support structures such as school and district-based multidisciplinary teams, thus setting the foundations for providing quality education for all children. In 2015, South Africa signed the Incheon Declaration, reiterating a framework for action with the 2030 Global Sustainable Development Goal 4, which recognizes the important role of inclusive, equitable, quality education as a main driver of a country's development. Specifically targets 4.5 on eliminating discriminatory practices and target 4.6 on ensuring universal literacy and numeracy are particularly relevant in this context where biological diversity such as handedness is valued and celebrated. South Africa periodically reports on the country's progress towards achieving these goals with the Global Education Monitoring Reports. The South Africa 2020 GEM report, unfortunately, shows worsening early grade literacy and numeracy levels, and the country is called upon to work much harder on ensuring literacy and numeracy for all children. As the history of human thinking has developed from superstition to science, the explanation of left-handedness has transformed from the devil's work to neurological specificity. In 2020, scientists conducted a meta-analysis combining many research studies from across the globe spanning 2.3 million people and found the prevalence of left-handedness lies between 9.3 and 18%, with the best overall estimate at approximately 10%. The world's overall population in 2020 was estimated to be 7.8 billion people, so that implies that over 800 million people are left-handedness. This ratio of 90 to 10 seems to have remained remarkably stable for the past 10,000 years and across cultures and ethnicities. This suggests that left-handedness brings certain evolutionary advantages. Left-handedness is more common in boys than girls, and it appears to be hereditary in families, with two left-handed parents having a very high chance of having a left-handed child. This genetic causality was confirmed in 2021 by a study showing 41 common variant locations in the genome associated with left-handedness. And a 2024 study has focused on rare protein coding variants. These genes are important for building microtubules in cells, playing a role to give cells stability and in embryonic processes that differentiate the left and right in the body. For example, that the heart is on the left side and the liver on the right side. It seems that scientists are increasingly coming closer to understanding the genetic causes of left-handedness. A brief look at the neuroscience of body side dominance and laterality reveals that the left side of the body is controlled by the right brain hemisphere, and the right side of the body is controlled by the left hemisphere. However, one side becomes dominant as it is used consistently rather than the other side. One eye, hand, and foot will develop dominance over the other side. The asymmetry of brain organization and the resultant lateralization was considered unique to humans. But scientists recently have shown lateralization is a fundamental characteristic of the organization of brain behavior in all vertebrates. Hand dominance is the preference for consistently using one hand rather than the other hand to perform fine and gross motor tasks. A hand preference usually starts to develop between the ages of 2 to 4 years old. Ambiguous handedness is common at this stage as children swap hands learning daily activities such as eating with a spoon, building blocks, or drawing with a crayon. Between the ages of 4 to 6 years, a clear hand preference is usually established as being either right or left-handed. By the time a child starts formal schooling, hand dominance for writing should be well established. The dominant hand is able to perform more complex and subtle manual tasks than the non-dominant hand, and this behavioral superiority is the absolute result of additional cerebral neurological support. Left-handedness has been associated with the slightly larger corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, which suggests that left-handers have an enhanced connectivity between the two hemispheres and hence slightly faster information processing. One theory argues that this is due to left-handers living in a world designed for right-handers, which forces them to use both hands, thereby increasing connectivity between the two hemispheres. Cutting and scissor skills are one of the critical pre-writing skills to develop fine motor hand and finger skills, as the same muscles are used for manipulating the pencil. Thus, teaching left-handers to cut is really important. Left-handers using a right-handed pair of scissors have the blade obstructing the cutting line, so the child won't be able to cut accurately on the line. They must use a left-handed scissors. The foundational cutting motion is a grasping, release, or opening and closing action, repeated over and over again, at the same time holding the paper with the supporting right hand. The thumbs up rule applies, with the thumb holding the scissors on the top, and the thumb of the right working hand also on the top of the paper to turn the paper and keep cutting on the exact required lines. For cutting straight lines, start on the left-hand side, and for cutting spirals, cut in a clockwise direction. For a right-handed teacher who gets muddled with teaching left-handers to cut or tie shoelaces, sit directly opposite the child, who then mirrors and copies the teacher. The three-finger dynamic tripod pencil grip develops by about 5 to 6 years old and is considered the most appropriate mature pencil grip for both right and left-handed writers, as it allows the fingers and wrist to work together effortlessly to do quick, free-flowing movements. To teach the tripod grip, put the pencil on the desk with the nib down. Pick up using the thumb and forefinger. Slide the middle finger in so the pencil leans to the left. Tuck the ring finger and little fingers in, and you can hold a small piece of paper in the palm to practice. Encourage left-handers to hold the pencil slightly further up the shaft to allow a clear view of the writing. Also try to get a left-handed pencil sharpener. If the child shares a desk, seat them on the left side to prevent elbow bumping. Left-handed people generally have great difficulty and annoyance using ballpoint pens, which are designed to allow ink to flow out of the nib while it is being pulled across the page from left to right. This principle works well for right-handed writing, since the nib is facing away from the direction of travel. But for left-handers, the nib is being pushed directly into the paper, preventing the free flow of ink to the page. And after writing a paragraph or so, the ink dries up and needs a scribble to release the flow of ink again. Left-handers should experiment with different styles and types of pens to find one that works best for them. Some left-handers go to extremes for ease of writing, such as using the Fisher Space pen, which has a sealed, pressurized cartridge and allows writing upside down, underwater, and in space. These pens have been used in manned space flights for the past 50 years and were taken by astronauts to the moon in 1969. They are also very useful for left-handers. Left-handed children often smudge their work as they slide the hand across their writing and get pencil graphite and ink stains on their hands. Fountain pens are physically impossible to use unless some convoluted wrist-straining maneuvers are done to prevent the wet ink from smudging across the page as the wrist and sleeve move across the wet ink. There are quick-drying inks available for fountain pens to experiment with. Some teachers advise using a plastic bag on the hand or putting a small piece of paper like a post-it note on the side of the hand to absorb any residual wet ink. Experiment more with absorbent paper that allows ink to dry quickly. The angle of the hand on the page should also be adjusted so the hand is below the writing line and not being dragged over the wet writing. Writing is faster and neater with the book angled slightly from the edge of the desk and parallel to the forearm of the left arm. Angling the book allows the child to write in a downhill direction, which allows left-handers to see what they are writing and allows the fine finger movements required for speed and wrist control for quality of handwriting. Directionality can be challenging as the natural inclination for left-handers is to work from right to left. Place a sticker in the top left-hand corner of the page as a reminder to work from left to right. Avoid notebooks with rings. Teachers should check that the child's seated position is comfortable, that the desk and chair size match the child's size, with both feet firmly on the floor for stability. The goal is to master handwriting easily, without getting cramps, shoulder and back pain, fatigue, and exhaustion. Early education classes often include symmetry diagrams, which tend to be on the left side of the page, which works well for right-handed children to easily copy the diagram. Teachers should provide diagrams on both sides of the page, so left-handed children can copy the image without continually having the diagram covered up with their arm. Writing by hand occupies 30 to 60% of a child's school day and correlates with self-esteem and academic success. Children with laboriously slow, poor handwriting take longer to complete schoolwork and develop negative attitudes towards school. Handwriting forms part of the foundational skills that lead towards automatic word recognition in reading. Learning to form the shapes of letters solidifies the alphabetic principle, the sound-letter correspondences, and knowledge of print. Writing letters repeatedly develops automatic retrieval of the sound of the symbol. This frees up working memory to focus on the words being written and their meanings. Writing by hand, not touching a screen, is a fine motor output with precise tactile biofeedback sensations in the brain, clearly linking letters, sounds, and words. For left-handers, horizontal lines in letters are quicker and easier if formed right to left. So teachers should be explicitly teaching letter formation correctly. The goal is to master handwriting with ease and finesse. In conclusion, Diversity of body side dominance, which manifests in left and right-handedness, is now better understood as scientists research the intricacies of the human genome, body lateralization, and the neurological functioning of the brain. The vision of an inclusive society where diversity is celebrated and all children have access to quality education and appropriate facilities is entrenched in South Africa's Constitution, our international commitments, local education legislation, and operational policies. There is no reason whatsoever for left-handed children to be forced to write with the right hand, to be stigmatized, belittled, and denied their natural developmental inclination. Modern schools and teachers have a responsibility to provide quality teaching materials like left-handed scissors, quick-drying pens, and appropriate didactic methods promoting literacy to all learners, including the left-handed minority.